house-sitting job without asking many questions. The pay was good, too good, really, and the listing had been up for less than 3 hours before I responded. Mrs. Caldwell, the owner, seemed relieved when I called. She explained that she'd be gone for 2 weeks visiting her daughter in Portland, and she just needed someone to water the plants, collect the mail, and keep the house lived in. Those were her exact words. Keep it lived in. The house sat at the end of Mercy Lane, a gravel road that broke off from the main highway about 4 miles outside of town. It was a 2-story colonial with white siding that had gone gray in places, surrounded by pine trees that blocked out most of the afternoon sun. Mrs. Caldwell met me there on a Sunday to hand over the keys. She walked me through each room quickly, pointing out the thermostat, the breaker box, the temperamental back door that needed to be lifted slightly when you locked it. She paused in the kitchen, her hand resting on the counter. "There's just one thing," she said, not quite meeting my eyes. "Don't go into the basement after dark." I waited for her to laugh, to signal that she was joking. She didn't. "The stairs are steep," she added quickly, "and the light switch is at the bottom. I'd hate for you to fall." She handed me the keys then, 3 of them on a plain metal ring, and left before I could ask anything else. The first day was fine. I unpacked my things in the upstairs guest room, a small space with floral wallpaper and a window that overlooked the backyard. I watered the plants. There were more than I expected, clustered on every windowsill, and made myself dinner in the kitchen. The house was quiet, but not unnaturally so. Old houses settle, floorboards creak. I reminded myself of this as I ate pasta at the dining room table, scrolling through my phone. That night, I slept deeply. The second day, I explored a bit more. I opened closets, looked through the books on the living room shelves, mostly paperback mysteries and gardening guides. I found a photo album on the hallway table and flipped through it. Mrs. Caldwell appeared in several pictures, always alone or with an older woman I assumed was a sister or friend. No husband, no children, despite what she'd said about visiting her daughter. I closed the album and put it back exactly where I'd found it. The basement door was in the kitchen, next to the pantry. It was painted the same white as the walls, easy to overlook. I stood in front of it that afternoon, my hand on the doorknob. Mrs. Caldwell's warning echoed in my head, but it was barely past 3 o'clock. Daylight streamed through the kitchen window. I turned the knob. The door was locked. I hadn't tried the 3rd key yet. I pulled out the key ring and looked at it. 2 brass keys for the front and back doors, and 1 smaller silver key. I slid it into the basement lock, and it turned smoothly. The door opened inward, revealing a wooden staircase that descended into darkness. I felt along the wall for a light switch. There wasn't one. Mrs. Caldwell had been telling the truth about that. I pulled out my phone and turned on the flashlight, aiming it down the stairs. The beam illuminated rough wooden steps, a concrete floor at the bottom, and what looked like storage shelves along the far wall. Nothing unusual, nothing frightening. I started down, counting the steps as I went. 13 in total. The basement was exactly what you'd expect. Cluttered, damp-smelling, full of boxes and old furniture covered with sheets. My flashlight swept across a workbench, a water heater, a stack of paint cans. I was about to head back up when the beam caught something else. A chair sitting in the center of the room. It faced the stairs. I stood there for a moment, my light fixed on it. It was wooden, with a straight back and no cushion. The kind of chair you'd find at an old dining table. There was nothing on it, nothing around it. Just the chair, positioned as if someone had been sitting there, watching the stairs. I went back upstairs and locked the basement door behind me. That night, I couldn't sleep as easily. I lay in the guest bed, staring at the ceiling, thinking about the chair. It didn't mean anything. Someone had probably just left it there. Maybe Mrs. Caldwell used the basement for storage, and that's where the chair ended up. But why facing the stairs? Around 2 in the morning, I heard it. A soft sound, rhythmic and faint, coming from somewhere below me. At first, I thought it was the house settling, or maybe a branch scraping against a window. But as I lay there listening, I realized what it was. Footsteps, slow, deliberate footsteps, moving across the first floor. I sat up, my heart suddenly loud in my ears. The footsteps continued, creaking across what sounded like the living room. Then they stopped. I waited, barely breathing. The house was completely silent. Then the footsteps started again, moving toward the kitchen. I grabbed my phone from the nightstand, keeping the sound off as I opened it. No signal. I'd noticed the reception was spotty out here, but I'd had at least one bar earlier. Now there was nothing. I got out of bed as quietly as I could and moved to the bedroom door, pressing my ear against it. The footsteps had stopped again. I counted to 60, then slowly turned the doorknob and opened the door a crack. The hallway was dark. I could see the staircase railing, the faint outline of the bathroom door across from me. Everything was still. I convinced myself I'd imagined it. Old houses make noises. I'd been half asleep, probably dreaming. I closed the door and went back to bed, but I didn't sleep. I lay there until the sky began to lighten outside my window, and only then did I finally drift off. When I woke up around 9, everything looked different in the daylight. Normal, safe. I went downstairs and made coffee, checked my phone, still no signal, and ate breakfast, standing at the kitchen counter. The basement door was still locked. The living room was empty. Nothing was out of place. I spent the day trying to distract myself. I read, watched something on my laptop, took a walk down the gravel road and back. But as the afternoon faded and evening approached, I felt a growing sense of dread. I didn't want to be in the house after dark. I didn't want to hear those footsteps again, but I couldn't leave. I'd signed a contract. Mrs. Caldwell was counting on me. And more than that, I needed the money. The third night, that was when everything changed. I decided to stay downstairs as as long as possible, keeping lights on in every room I occupied. I sat in the living room with my laptop, the television on for background noise, even though I wasn't watching it. Around 11, I went to the kitchen to get water. The basement door was open, not just unlocked. Open, a gap of about 6 inches, with darkness visible beyond it. I stood there, the glass in my hand, staring at that gap. I knew I'd locked it. I'd checked it that morning and again in the afternoon. I'd heard the bolt slide home. I watched myself set the glass down on the counter, watched my hand reach out and push the door closed. The lock clicked into place. I backed away from it, my eyes fixed on the door, waiting for it to move again. It didn't. But as I stood there, I heard something else. A creak from the basement stairs. Just one. Like someone had shifted their weight. I ran. I took the stairs 2 at a time and locked myself in the guest room, shoving a chair under the doorknob, the way I'd seen in movies. My hands were shaking. My phone still had no signal. I was alone in this house, at the end of a gravel road, miles from town, and something was in the basement. Or someone. That thought was somehow worse. I sat on the bed with my back against the headboard, knees pulled up to my chest, watching the door. Hours passed. Midnight. 1 a.m. too. Nothing happened. No footsteps, no sounds, no movement. The house was completely silent. But silence can be worse than sound. Because in silence, you're waiting. In silence, you're listening so hard that your ears start to create sounds that aren't there. In silence, you become aware of your own breathing, your own heartbeat, and you realize how loud you are in a space that's trying to be completely still. At 3:47 a.m., I remember checking the time. I heard my name. It came from the hallway just outside my door. A woman's voice, soft and uncertain. Hello. Not Mrs. Caldwell's voice. Someone younger. Is someone there? The voice called. I didn't answer. I didn't move. The chair was still wedged under the doorknob. The voice couldn't be real. I was alone in this house. Please, the voice said. I need help. Every instinct in my body was screaming 2 different things. Help whoever is out there, and don't you dare open that door. I stayed frozen, my hand clamped over my mouth to keep silent. The doorknob turned, slowly testing. The chair held. The door rattled slightly, but didn't open. The doorknob turned back to its original position. Then, after a pause, why won't you let me in? The voice was different now. Flatter. All the fear and pleading gone from it. Just a simple question, asked with mild curiosity. I didn't sleep that night. I sat against the headboard until dawn, watching the door, listening for any sound. When gray light finally started seeping through the curtains, the house felt different again. The oppressive weight lifted. I heard birds outside, the normal sounds of morning. I waited until full daylight before moving the chair and opening the door. The hallway was empty. Everything looked exactly as it had the day before. I went downstairs, half expecting to find the basement door open again, but it was closed and locked. I checked every room on the first floor. Nothing was disturbed. But when I went to make coffee, I found something that made my blood go cold. On the kitchen table, arranged in a neat line, were 3 of the spare keys from the junk drawer. I'd seen them there when I'd poked around on the first day-old, unlabeled keys that probably didn't fit anything in the house anymore. I'd left them in the drawer. Now they sat on the table, evenly spaced, all facing the same direction, pointing toward the basement door. I picked up one of the keys with shaking hands. It was ice cold, despite the kitchen being warm. I dropped it, and it clattered against the table. The sound was too loud in the quiet house. That's when I noticed the basement door. Still closed, still locked. But now there was something wedged under it. A piece of paper, folded once. I approached slowly, my footsteps sounding too loud against the linoleum. I bent down and pulled the paper free. It was old, yellowed at the edges, torn from a spiral notebook. The handwriting was shaky, written in pencil that had faded in places. It said, "She told you not to come down after dark. You should have listened." Below that, after a space, one more line. "We're not supposed to leave." I read it 3 times, trying to make sense of it. We, plural. I turned the paper over. The other side was blank except for a single word, written larger than the rest. "Sorry. I should have left then. I should have grabbed my things and walked out the front door and never looked back." But I didn't. Because underneath the fear, underneath the certainty that something was deeply wrong with this house, was another feeling. I needed to understand. I needed to know what was in the basement. I spent the rest of the morning trying to convince myself to leave. I paced through the rooms, checked my phone obsessively for a signal that never came, and kept looking at that piece of paper I'd left on the kitchen counter. The words seemed to get darker each time I glanced at them, though I knew that was impossible. Around noon, I forced myself to eat something. I made a sandwich I barely tasted, standing at the counter, because sitting at the table where those keys had been arranged felt wrong. The basement door was to my left, just at the edge of my vision. I kept expecting it to open. It didn't, but I realized something as I stood there. The house was too quiet. I hadn't heard the refrigerator hum all morning. The clock on the wall had stopped at 3:47, the exact time I'd heard the voice outside my door. When I tried the kitchen faucet, water came out, but it was ice cold even after I'd let it run for a full minute. I walked through the first floor checking things. The television wouldn't turn on. The lamps worked, but the light they gave off seemed dimmer than it should be, as if something was absorbing it. In the living room, I found another photograph I hadn't noticed before, sitting on the mantel. Mrs. Caldwell stood next to a younger woman, maybe 30, with dark hair pulled back in a ponytail. They weren't smiling. The The younger woman's eyes looked wrong somehow, unfocused, like she was looking past the camera at something else. I turned the frame over. Taped to the back was a piece of masking tape with 2 words written in marker. My daughter. My stomach dropped. Mrs. Caldwell had said she was visiting her daughter in Portland. But something about this photo felt final, like a memorial. I put the frame back exactly where I'd found it. The afternoon dragged on. I tried to read, but couldn't focus. Every sound made me jump, the house settling, branches against windows, the wind picking up outside. Around 4 o'clock, I noticed something that made me stop mid-step. There were wet footprints on the hardwood floor in the hallway. Small footprints, barefoot, leading from the kitchen to the stairs. They hadn't been there an hour ago. I was certain of it. I knelt down and touched one. My finger came away damp. The print was recent. I followed them with my eyes. They went up the stairs, disappearing around the corner to the 2nd floor, to where my room was. I didn't want to go up there, but I also couldn't stay on the 1st floor knowing someone had gone upstairs. I climbed slowly, my hand on the railing, watching each step. The footprints continued down the hallway. They stopped at my bedroom door. The door was open. I'd left it closed. I stood in the hallway for a long time, trying to decide what to do. The light was starting to fade outside. In another hour, it would be dark, and I knew that everything would be worse after dark. I stepped into my room. Everything looked normal at first. My bag was where I'd left it, my clothes folded on the chair. The bed was made, but when I moved further inside, I saw it. Someone had written on the mirror above the dresser, not with marker or lipstick, but with a finger, as if the glass had been fogged up. The message was simple: basement, tonight, alone. My reflection stared back at me through the words. Behind me, the room was empty, but I had the strongest feeling that I wasn't alone, that if I turned around quickly enough, I'd see someone standing right behind me. I didn't turn around. I backed out of the room, pulled the door closed, and went downstairs. The sun was setting. Orange light slanted through the windows, making long shadows across the floors. I went to the front door and tried the handle. It turned, but the door wouldn't open. I pulled harder. Nothing. I checked the lock. It wasn't engaged. The door simply wouldn't budge, as if it had been nailed shut from the outside. I ran to the back door. Same thing. The handle turned. The lock was disengaged, but the door wouldn't open. I slammed my shoulder against it. The impact sent pain shooting down my arm, but the door didn't move even a fraction of an inch. I was trapped. The light was fading fast now, shadows pooling in the corners of rooms. I turned on every lamp and overhead light I could find, but it didn't help much. The darkness seemed to be seeping in from somewhere, eating the light as fast as I could create it. I went back to the kitchen and stood in front of the basement door. The note was still on the counter where I'd left it. We're not supposed to leave. I thought about the daughter in the photograph. I thought about the chair facing the stairs. I thought about the voice that had called my name, asking to be let in. My hand was on the doorknob before I'd consciously decided to do it. "This is insane," I whispered to myself, but I pulled out the keys anyway. The silver one slid into the lock. Before I turned it, I heard something that made me freeze. It was coming from the basement, muffled but distinct. Crying. Someone was crying down there. Not the theatrical sobbing of a ghost story, but real crying. Quiet, exhausted, the sound of someone who'd been crying for a long time and had almost no strength left. It was the most human sound I'd heard since arriving at this house, and somehow that made it more terrifying. "Hello," I called through the door. My voice sounded thin and scared. The crying stopped immediately. In the silence that followed, I heard something else. Movement. Someone was climbing the stairs on the other side of the door. Slow, hesitant steps, coming closer. They stopped right on the other side of the door. I could sense someone standing there, inches away, with only the wood between us. "Please," a voice said, the same voice from last night. Young, female, desperate. "Please let me out. She locks me down here. I don't know why. I don't know how long I've been here." My hand was still on the key. "Who are you?" "My name is Sarah. Sarah Caldwell." "That woman, she says she's my mother, but I don't remember. I don't remember anything before waking up down here. Please, you have to help me." I thought about the photograph, the daughter with the unfocused eyes. "When did you wake up down there?" I asked. A pause. "I don't know. There's no windows, no clock. It feels like years, but that's impossible. Please, just open the door." Everything in me was screaming that this was wrong, that I shouldn't trust this, that the voice wasn't what it seemed. But what if it was real? What if there really was someone trapped down there, and I was the only person who could help? "Step back from the door," I said. Okay, I'm stepping back." I heard footsteps retreating down the stairs. I took a breath, turned the key, and opened the basement door. The darkness below was absolute. My phone's flashlight barely penetrated it, the beam seeming to stop just a few feet down the stairs. I couldn't see the bottom. "Sarah," I called down. No answer. I took one step down. The wood creaked under my weight. The temperature dropped immediately. I could see my breath fogging in the flashlight beam. Another step. The darkness seemed to press against me, heavy and cold. "Sarah, are you down there?" Movement. Something shifted in the darkness at the bottom of the stairs. I aimed my light at it. The chair was gone. The one that had been facing the stairs, it wasn't there anymore. "Come down," a voice said from the darkness. Not the young woman's voice. This was older, raspier, familiar. "Come down and see." Mrs. Caldwell's voice. I took a step back up. The basement door swung shut above me with a bang that echoed through the darkness. I heard the lock click into place. I was trapped in the basement. I ran up the stairs and pounded on the door, screaming, but it wouldn't budge. My flashlight flickered, the beam weakening. I spun around, shining the dying light down into the basement. There were people down there, not moving, not making a sound, but standing in the darkness, watching me. I could see their outlines, their shapes, maybe a dozen of them, all perfectly still. The light flickered again, and when it came back, they were closer. They'd moved without making a sound. "No," I said, backing against the door. "No, no, no." The light flickered a third time. When it returned, they were at the base of the stairs. I could see faces now, pale and wrong, features that didn't quite align properly. One of them was the young woman from the photograph. She tilted her head slowly, studying me. "You came down after dark," she said softly. "You broke the rule." "She breaks them too," another voice said. An older man, wearing what might have been a suit, but hung wrong on his frame. "She broke the first rule. That's why she's here." "What rule?" I managed to ask. The young woman, Sarah, climbed the first stair. "You don't keep people in basements. You don't lock your daughter in the dark and tell yourself it's for her own good. You don't do that." Another step up. She was close enough now that I could see her eyes. They were filmed over, milky white, completely blind. "But she did," Sarah continued. "And when I died down here, alone in the dark, something noticed. Something that doesn't like rules being broken. It made a new rule for her. Anyone who comes to this house alone stays. They stay and they wait. And when someone new comes, someone living, someone warm, we're supposed to bring them down." "That's not," I started, but my flashlight died completely, plunging us into absolute darkness. I felt hands on me. Cold, too many of them, pulling me away from the door. I screamed and fought, but they were impossibly strong. They dragged me down the stairs, my feet bumping against each step, 13 of them, just like before. When I hit the concrete floor at the bottom, the hands released me. I scrambled backward until my back hit something solid. A wall. Or maybe the shelves I'd seen on my first trip down here. Then, impossibly, there was light. Not from any bulb or lamp, but a faint, sickly green glow that seemed to come from the walls themselves. It was just enough to see by. The basement was much larger than I'd thought. It stretched back into darkness beyond what the light revealed, and I could see that the concrete floor was covered in scratches. Names, dates, messages, all carved or scraped into the stone. Dozens of them, maybe hundreds. The figures stood in a loose semicircle around me. Sarah was in front, her blind eyes fixed on where I sat. "Mrs. Caldwell broke the rule," she said again. "So now she has to feed the house. Someone living, someone alone, every few months. They come down, they stay, and eventually," she gestured at the figures around her. "Eventually, they become part of it, part of what waits." "Where is she?" I asked. "Where's Mrs. Caldwell?" Sarah pointed into the darkness behind her. In the distance, Barely visible in the green glow, I saw a figure. It sat in a chair, the chair that had been facing the stairs. But this one was further back, almost lost in shadow. The figure didn't move, but I could feel it watching. "She can't leave," Sarah said. "None of us can. The house won't let us. But you," she knelt down in front of me, her white eyes somehow seeing despite their blindness. "You're different. You came on your own. You answered the ad. You wanted to be here." "I needed the money," I whispered. She smiled, but it was a sad smile. "That's what they all say, but the house knows. It always knows when someone's running from something, when someone wants to disappear, just for a little while." She leaned closer. "What were you running from?" I couldn't answer, because she was right. I had been running. From debt, from a life that felt like it was collapsing, from decisions I didn't want to face. I'd seen the ad and jumped at it because some part of me wanted to be isolated, wanted to be somewhere no one could find me. And the house had known. "The third night," Sarah said, standing up. "That's when the house tests you. That's when it decides if you stay or if you go. You came down here on the third night. You opened the door. You broke the rule." She turned to walk away, back toward the darkness where Mrs. Caldwell sat watching. "Wait," I said. "What happens now?" She looked back over her shoulder. "Now you wait, and you'll learn why we're not supposed to leave, why the house needs us here, why there always has to be someone in the basement, sitting in the dark, keeping it satisfied." Her voice dropped to a whisper. "And when the next person comes, you'll be the one calling to them. You'll be the voice asking to be let in." The figures began to fade, melting back into the shadows. The green glow dimmed. I was alone in the darkness again, or almost alone. I could still feel them there, watching, waiting. I don't know how long I've been down here. There's no way to measure time in the dark. Sometimes I hear footsteps above me, moving through the house. Sometimes the basement door opens and light spills down the stairs, and I have to stop myself from calling out, from begging to be let up, because I tried that once, in those first hours or days or weeks. I screamed until my throat was raw. I pounded on the walls until my hands bled. And something came out of the deeper darkness, something I couldn't see but could feel, and it whispered in my ear, "The more you fight, the longer you stay. Accept it. Sit. Wait. Be still." So now I wait. I found the chair. It's back here, in the deeper darkness where Mrs. Caldwell used to sit. She's gone now. I think the house let her go when I arrived, though I'm not sure. Maybe she's still here, just further back, in a darkness even deeper than mine. Sometimes I hear the phone ring upstairs. I hear someone answer it, using my voice, saying everything is fine. The house-sitting job is going well. No problems at all. I wonder who's calling. Friends, family. Do they notice something wrong with my voice? Or does the house make it sound normal? I've started carving my name into the floor, adding it to all the others. I use a piece of broken concrete I found. The scratching sound echoes through the basement. When I'm done, I trace my fingers over the other names, reading them in the dark. So many names, so many people who came to this house alone. And now I wait for the footsteps, for the next person who'll answer the ad, who'll take the job, who'll need the money badly enough to ignore the isolation and the strangeness and the warnings. I wait for the third night, when I'll stand at the bottom of these stairs and call out in a voice that sounds desperate and human and real. I'll ask them to open the door. I'll beg them to let me out. And if they do, when they do, I'll finally understand what Sarah meant. We're not supposed to leave, but someone has to take our place. The basement door just opened. I can see light at the top of the stairs, faint and distant. I can hear movement up there, someone new, someone who doesn't know yet. Someone who came to this house alone, who thought they'd be safe here. It's the third night. I stand up from the chair. My legs are stiff from sitting. I move to the bottom of the stairs, placing my feet carefully so they won't creak and give me away too soon. I grip the railing with hands that have gone cold from the darkness. I open my mouth to call out, to use the voice, to say the words that will bring them down here. But then I stop, because I hear something else. Something I haven't heard since I've been down here. Footsteps in the basement. Behind me, coming from the deeper darkness where Mrs. Caldwell used to sit, where I thought she'd gone. They're slow and deliberate, getting closer, and I realize she never left. None of them left. They're all still here, back in that darkness, waiting. Layer after layer of them, going back how many years, how many decades. The footsteps stop right behind me. I feel breath on my neck, cold and wrong. Go on, Mrs. Caldwell's voice whispers in my ear. Call to them. It's your turn now. Bring them down. Or the voice changes, becomes something older, something that isn't human and never was. Or go back, go deeper, join us here. Let someone else have the stairs. The person above moves in the kitchen. I hear them testing the basement door lock. They'll come down soon, with or without my calling. They always do. The house makes sure of it. I have to choose. Do I call out? Do I become what Sarah was, what Mrs. Caldwell was before her? Do I lure someone else down into this darkness? Or do I step back, walk away from the stairs, and let myself sink into the deeper darkness where the others wait, where something older than the house itself keeps us, feeds on us, adds us to its collection? The light from upstairs grows brighter. The person is coming closer to the door. I take a breath to call out, but the footsteps behind me move again, and a hand cold, impossibly strong, closes around my wrist. It's time to choose, the voice says. Feed it or join it. The basement door, at the top of the stairs, swings open. Someone calls down, "Hello, is anyone there?" And I realize with absolute certainty that it doesn't matter what I choose, because I'm not the one in control anymore. I haven't been since the third night, since I opened the door and came down here. The house decides. The thing in the darkness decides. We just wait here until it's ready to use us. I open my mouth, not knowing what will come out, a warning or a lure, my voice or something else's. The person at the top of the stairs starts to descend, and in the darkness behind me, I hear more footsteps, many more. We're all still here. Everyone who ever came to this house alone. Everyone who broke the rule. Everyone who thought they'd be safe. We're all still here, and we always will be.
Qui fate maintenance ut nemo, quam sibi sortem, se orat integris, se fortius ut nemo.